Hey everybody, we're going to take a look at why we believe 6 ridiculous lies about the founding of America based on the article that we should have read. And so let's break it down into these kind of 6 big ideas into 6 big videos. So first off, the idea, the Indians weren't defeated by white settlers. And big fact there. The myth, the idea that Indians were defeated by overwhelming, powerful white settlers. And they don't really go into a lot of the older textbooks, don't go into detail as far as how that happened, especially the elementary level. As far as the movie myth, we get the noble savages that were defeated by superior technology. And these are largely older, more racist movies that don't take a lot of factors into account. And even just the phrase noble savages just implies quite a bit about Native American culture. A lot of this comes down to the Black Legend. And the idea there is that the Spanish were butchers and thieves, and they don't really recognize the fact that they took the first steps to bring European culture to the Americas. This is the start of that Columbian exchange. And the Black Legend is mostly it's English propaganda. The English were not fans of the Spanish. They were having a bit of a religious war, Protestants and Catholics, especially after the Spanish Armada attack. So their history books started to really show horrible pictures like this, where we've got Spaniards allowing their dogs of war to just eat natives alive. And so a lot of our history books started to really believe and promote this idea of the Black Legend, as a lot of our history books are English-based. The truth, as always, is more complicated. From 1492 to 1620, which is the era we always skip over, the most devastating plague in human history raced across America. Before the plague, America's population was, and we're got some big estimates here, between 20 to 100 million, versus Europe, which was about 70 million. It's a huge gap between 20 and 100 because, again, we can't count. This is just based on the archaeological evidence we've found so far. That number is going to change as the archaeological evidence changes. But this plague sweeps west, killing off at least, at a bare minimum, 90% of the native population across the Americas. And in most cases, the disease would show up often before they had actual contact with white explorers. And for example, so if we got Cortez first arriving in Mexico, and he'll spread disease there, but Cortez wasn't able to reach large areas across the United States. However, because of trade networks between Native American tribes, the natives would spread the disease to tribes that had never had European contact. And so this disease just spreads across America, taking out tribes left and right that had yet to actually meet a white person. This all comes down to the Columbian Exchange. This really is the first time that these two hemispheres of the planet meet. And Europe contributes all sorts of diseases, smallpox, the flu, typhus, measles, malaria, diphtheria, whooping cough, all sorts of nasty little critters. As far as livestock, livestock's going to do some pretty harsh damage as well. Cows, sheep, pigs, horses. For the first time we have the stereotype of horses, Native Americans on horses, but largely horses were gone by this point. We have records and bones of horses thousands of years ago, but by 1492 they're gone. And so it definitely becomes a part of many native cultures and changes travel and culture for the tribes. Pigs and cows will really demolish certain areas and change the environment in many ways as they eat everything. New grains such as wheat, rice, barley, oat, peaches, pears, coffee will have a huge impact on plantations. Turnips, olives, onions. Bees, thank you Europe. Bees will come, but they'll bring honey. Sugar, huge impact on slavery in the plantations. Bananas, grapes, citrus, all these things are brought over to the Americas and just become part of our everyday food now. As far as what does America give back to Europe, not too many on the diseases, although syphilis, there's a strong case, and we're digging up more evidence in the last 30 years that syphilis was our gift back. But we also give up some nice food, including sweet potatoes, peppers, so all the peppers, squash, pumpkins, tobacco, which again huge in when it comes to the plantations, but not too great for the health of the world. Turkeys, so you really think of the Thanksgiving dinner A lot of the Thanksgiving dinner is pretty much standard American food. Pineapples, cacao, which is chocolate, but it's chocolate without sugar, and it's much different. Beans, vanilla, peanuts, potatoes, all potatoes. Ireland doesn't get potatoes, we made them first. But they do pretty well with it. Tomatoes and corn, these are all very American things, and we start this exchange between these two halves of the world. An example, a case. So the Aztecs were not defeated because the Spanish were just magical and amazing. Multiple factors led to the fall of a massive empire. Well, first we have a disease wiping out 50 to 90% of the population. And part of it was Cortez shows up at the exact time that a Aztec god was expected to arrive, Quetzalcoatl. And so he's greeted into the city, allowed easily into the city. The Aztecs lower their defenses into a complex and well-defended city. He's allowed in, but pretty quickly they figure out this guy is not a god, this is not Quetzalcoatl. And so he's chased out of the city, but not before a couple of his men are able to either die and spread disease or just spread disease naturally. And so he leaves, he's kicked out, but the disease already started in the city. And by the time Cortez comes back about a year later, a large part of a massive city the size of London or Paris at the time is wiped out just by disease. So those little critters are the largest factor in the fall of the Aztecs, not Cortez and his magic. Malinche is another huge factor as far as how to take down the Aztec Empire. Cortez has a few dozen men, if that. But there are multiple tribes, smaller tribes, around the Aztec Empire that are not fans. The Aztecs had slaves that they would collect from these smaller villages. And a lot of these villages were not fans of the Aztecs. And so one of the women from these villages comes to be known as Malinche. She learns Spanish, is able to unite all the tribes around the Aztecs against the Aztecs. And to this day, Malinche is kind of seen as a traitor for leading to the fall of the Aztec Empire, a great mighty empire. But it's understandable as well why she would do that, as her people were enslaved. Then the last factor, which this should be the last factor, the other two are much more important. The last factor is there was a Spanish military advantage. They had horses, which were brand new, so you have kind of a platform to fight from. Steel versus clubs, an obsidian which is sharper but not as strong, and then muskets, not as good as a gun but psychologically very frightening. And so these multiple factors lead to the fall of the Aztecs, but it's not that the Europeans were more powerful. This is a result of disease followed by teamwork, then the power of the Europeans. So why do we believe this idea that the Europeans were just that much powerful? It's more comfortable to believe that your ancestors won the land by being the superior culture. And a lot of the older textbooks are written by white people for white people. And so they want to be comfortable in the idea that they have a superior culture. And sure, there's a bit of old school racism there. European settlers had a hard enough time defeating the stragglers of the once huge Native American population. So massive amounts had already died by the time some of these other settlers come in. But if disease was not a factor, and it was a 1-to-1 ratio, there would have been no chance. Even with superior technology, no chance. You had to assume that Native Americans at full strength would have ended any European attempts at colonization. An example, Jamestown, a terrible case where they are surrounded, they're just on their own, and they can't really feed themselves. They're completely relying on food shipments coming in from England. And it gets so bad during this starving time in the first few years that for years and years we had stories about cannibalism. And as of 2013, well, we found the evidence. We dug up Jamestown and we found this girl. And the skull of this girl shows clear evidence that she was eaten. Based on the cut of the marks and how it all looks, this was after she died, likely of natural causes or just starvation, that she was eaten. So she died naturally, but then she was eaten. You can see the clear cut marks, and part of the skull was bashed in to get to the brains, because brains have high calories, fun fact. And so because they're eating each other, it's clear evidence that they're just not that strong, not that powerful. They have their own issues. All right, that's myth number one. the idea that white people are not all powerful, they have flaws. Thank you.